Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Orphan, First Kill. Welcome back to Cinema Trip Reviews. I am Wyatt, of course, and today we're going to be talking about the movie Orphan, First Kill. This is the sequel to the, I believe it was 2007's Orphan movie. This just came out on Paramount Plus this weekend. I believe it's in select theaters, you know, across the states and everything. This movie was directed by William Brent Bell. He also directed Stay Alive, The Devil Inside, and I believe he directed both of the Boy movies that came out, those horror movies. Now, Isabelle Fuhrman has returned as Esther in this movie. I really didn't know what to expect from this movie going in. I didn't really watch too much of the trailers. I remember seeing the initial trailer they put out when they announced the movie, but I haven't really been following up on it since then, so I didn't really know what to expect going into it. The trailer kind of made it seem like it was a kind of a rehash of the first movie in a way, like it was going to be, they knew it was a prequel, but they made it seem like it was just going to be kind of following in the first one's footsteps of just a new family adopting Esther. And then, just, crazy stuff ensues. She starts murdering people, playing mind games with different people, just overall being a con woman in this case. Now, that first movie, when it came out, I really wasn't a fan. I just thought it was just another generic, just type of those movies that were coming out in like the late 2000s. Just another generic horror movie at the time. Now, I did appreciate the twist, though. I liked the twist on it. Of course, it's one of the bigger twists in horror cinema history at this point, where it's not just a girl that's been terrorizing this family. No, it's an actual, she had like a growing deficiency, and she's actually 30-something years old. And she's just conning her way into these different families' lives and taking over. Over the years, that movie has really grown on me. Recently just rewatched it a couple weeks ago. But I really enjoy it now, and I was ready to go into this movie, and I just kind of expected it to kind of be this somewhat of the same thing, just a different family that she was just going to go in and terrorize. Little did I know, this movie just flips everything on its head. I really enjoyed this movie overall. Now, it does star Julia Stiles as well, and you also got Matthew Finlan and Rossif Sutherland as the dad in the movie. I really enjoyed this movie. Now, there is a huge twist in about the midway point of this movie. I didn't like it at first. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. It felt very odd and out of place. But over the course of the rest of the movie, it kind of grew on me, and I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm not going to talk about spoilers right now. I'll go into them more towards the end of this review. There's a couple issues I have with the movie as far as like it's just a little nitpicky things, more so just like they could have been a little bit more creative with some of the deaths in the movie. I mean, you are kind of a horror, not a slasher per se, but I mean, with the amount of kills that are in this movie, they could have been a little bit more unique or original about it. And like the ending, it's specifically, without going into like spoiler details, it was just very anticlimactic. It just kind of just ended. There wasn't, it builds and builds and builds, and then it gets to that certain point and it just feels flat. It just ends on a very flat note. But overall, I was very entertained through this movie. I didn't know where it was going. Like, okay, because it is a prequel movie, so you really kind of get to see how she became that Esther character, how she developed that signature look that she has, through the first one, and you see it a lot in the second one here as well. And you also get to see some of the backstory about how she, got into like using the blacklight paintings that you saw in like the first one, where it was like the house on fire that the family discovers. But you kind of get to see the backstory about how she came into that as well. But overall, I did like this movie. I thought it was paced really well. The movie went by really fast. I did have some quarrels with some of the cinematography and some of the way that things were shot in the movie. The very beginning of the movie, you're like in this asylum or institution where she's being held, and of course she's breaking out, and there's like a chase through the institution itself. She's running through, she's hiding from people and all that. And over the course of the movie, they show a lot of like behind shots of like behind the back shots or behind the shoulder shots of Esther, and they use, of course they're going to use like an actual, like a child for those shots, so it actually looks like she's that size. And I'm not sure if some of those shots were like they're trying to be just artsy and using one shots in that little escape of the hospital, but it just felt very jarring and odd whenever she was running into cover and then like it would cut to a completely different person. Because I mean, at this point, she's closer to the age that Esther's supposed to be, like the real actress, Isabelle Fuhrman. She's like 20 something now, closer to 30. So she's not that child that she was when she made the original Orphan. So they had to get a stand-in with her as well. So whenever they're going in and out of, you're seeing like the behind the back shots of like of the child, and then you're seeing Isabelle in some of these certain shots, they don't really blend well together. You can definitely tell it's two separate people. And there's specifically one shot where she like runs into an elevator, and you could tell it's the kid because you're seeing it from back of her as she's running into this elevator, and as the camera turns into the elevator, it shows a closer up shot of Isabelle, and it just didn't really transition well in certain parts. It looked very odd, and it just looked very jumbled. Like, I don't know why they would have kept that in the movie, just because it didn't look smooth at all. But there's a couple other shots in the movie as well where it's kind of odd, where you can definitely tell like they maybe shouldn't have done that or went with that direction, or that kind of they shouldn't have filmed it that way. But my real problems really just lied with that hospital or institution breakout scene where she's just running and hiding in between certain things. A lot of weird shots in that. I feel like they could have cut that and edited it a lot better in there. Going into the actual story, before we get to the spoilers, I'm going to say I do recommend this for anybody that has seen The Orphan, the first one. I definitely recommend this. I'm not sure how you're going to react to the twist in the movie. And you may be like I did, where I just wasn't sure about it. I was very iffy on it when it happened. But towards the back half of the movie, I was all in. I was following the story. I was down for it at that point. But I definitely recommend this movie. Go watch it if you like the first one. If you're just interested in a cool horror flick, I would go watch the first one and then watch this one. It is a prequel, but I would still watch that first one. That way you can kind of get all the references and stuff that are happening in this one. Spoiler territory now. We're going to get into spoilers big time. So Esther breaks out of the institution. There's this doctor that was supposed to be taking care, or like kind of like supposed to be the Dr. Loomis to Esther at this point. She was trying to help her and see if she can get better in any way.
The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
But during this breakout, she ended up stowing away in this doctor's car as she was leaving, going back to her house. She ends up killing the doctor and going into her house, cleaning up. She's going through like the database on the computer where you can see all the missing persons. And she's been going through like all the missing children, and she finds one that looks very, very similar to herself. And of course, it is Esther. So she really takes on that role, and she takes over the persona of that Esther child that was disappearing. And then she calls in. My guess is that she said they found her. And then, of course, you meet Julia Stiles and her husband, who are the parents of the missing child. This child's been gone for like 3 or 4 years. She was in Moscow or like Russia. So they go to Moscow, and their child's like speaks with a Russian accent now, which after 4 years, I guess it's not impossible to develop an accent. But it would be very jarring or be very weird. But Julia Stiles is like the mom in the situation. She goes and picks her up. She's kind of thrown off by her kid having a like Russian accent. But I mean, if she's been kidnapped for 4 years, I mean, it's possible. But they go back to the States and everything. For most part, for most of the movie after they bring her home, you just think it's going to be another kind of like the original of the first one, where it's just, you know, her implementing herself into this family, fooling everybody. And she's just going to slowly take over and either steal stuff or start killing people, or it's going to just go haywire and go all wrong. Except this time, she's actually very similar to their real daughter that was missing. So instead of just in the first movie, a couple going out and adopting a kid, they think this is their actual daughter. Surprise, spoiler, the mother, Julia Stiles, and the son secretly killed the original daughter. They didn't do it on purpose. They don't even really go into what necessarily happened. But apparently the brother did something that killed the his sister at the time. They don't really go into what it was. Julia Stiles, like the mom kind of mentions that like he got a little too rough with her or something and she ended up dying. But she talks about like, oh, she's a mother, she's got to do everything to protect her children. Apparently not her daughter in this case, but her son. So she didn't want him to get in trouble. She didn't want to get in trouble. So they hid the body and said that she got kidnapped and went missing. Lo and behold, 4 years later, they find her daughter somewhere. And Julia Stiles, the mom, knows that this isn't her daughter. The son knows this isn't his sister. This is an imposter. So from what the mom says, she's playing along with this because she saw a difference in her husband once the daughter disappeared. He stopped working on his art. He became a different person. He became a little secluded. He just wasn't himself. But hearing the news about his daughter being alive and they found her, he really kind of started becoming himself again and bringing her home and interacting with the family. He became that person that she knew and fell in love with all those years ago. So she's just telling Esther, like, you got to play along with this. Everything will be fine until there's a certain point. Then you can we'll make sure that you go missing or whatever again, and we can go our separate ways at that point. Where it's like, okay, this is very weird. And it throws it all on you in just one scene because there's this cop that's kind of tailing Esther because he knows there's something off about her. He gets her fingerprints and finds that, oh, it's not a match between her and the original missing child. And as soon as he figures that out, Esther's like on his ass and she just stabs the hell out of him. She just murders the shit out of him. But as he's like laying on the floor dying, Julia Stiles comes in and ends up shooting him, killing him. And that's how she's like saying, like, I know what you're up to, such and such and such. She explains the whole plot. That twist really threw me off. I wasn't a big fan of it at first, but as you're going through the rest of the movie here, I started to dig it a little bit. I kind of got into it because you really grow to hate and dislike Julia Stiles and the son, Esther's brother in this case. They just turn into complete assholes at that point in time. Like, it goes back and forth. Like, she's fucking with Esther. Esther does certain things to fuck with them. Like, she puts a dead rat in like Julia Stiles like morning shake in the morning. It's so gross. But she tries to like push them in front of a train. It doesn't, work out, of course. But you get some funny back and forth scenes, but you really get to see the evil side of Julia Stiles and her son in this movie. It's so odd seeing these types of movies. I believe they did it with Don't Breathe too. I didn't get to see that one, but I enjoyed the first one. I just didn't get to see the second one. But in these movies, they kind of flip-flop you where you kind of root for the bad characters in these cases. Where like in the first movie, they adopt her. She's wreaking havoc. She's like kind of falling in love with the husband in the first movie. She's trying to break the family apart. But you're like kind of rooting for the family because you don't like this person. You don't like this girl that's the imposter in the family, and she's going around just trying to tear them apart. In this one, you're kind of on the same level for the most part for the first half of the movie. And then when things get flipped around and then Julia Stiles and her son are just controlling Esther, and they're locking her in a room, and she's not able to do anything or else they will report her to the authorities and she'll go to jail or whatnot. So then at that point, you're kind of rooting for Esther to get out of there or do something. You want her to do something to this family to get out just because you hate them so much at this point in the movie. So that's kind of the third act there, is just her trying to get out or trying to escape, trying to get away, and then she gets brought back to the house. They had me all the way up until this last part of the movie. It was very anticlimactic. The son gets his comeuppance just for being an asshole through the most part. She stabs the hell out of him with his fencing sword. But you get a couple of the blacklight scenes like you did in the first one. Now they introduced the blacklight thing into this because the father is an artist and he incorporates blacklight stuff into his paintings, just kind of give it an extra flair. And because he was saying like you run out of canvas, you can still add stuff on top of it that you may not see. Which, with the introduction of that and with them using it a lot in like the marketing and promo images of like the blacklight stuff, you think it would be a bigger part in this movie than it actually is, but it really isn't at all. There's only a couple little scenes with the blacklight, but it doesn't really come into play too much. Esther and Julia Stiles, they get in a fight. They're chasing each other. They're beating the hell out of each other in the kitchen. The house gets lit on fire, very similar to like the first one and stuff, like the painting with the house on fire. Esther just has a thing with fire for some reason. They have a rooftop battle. They're climbing up the roof of like this mansion. It kind of reminded me a lot of like Halloween 4 when Michael and Jamie and her sister are up on the rooftop there. I don't know. I just didn't like this part of the movie because they're like hanging from the gutter, and then like the father comes home and sees them, and he's got to rescue one of them, and the wife falls. Julia Stiles falls and she dies, and then he pulls Esther up, and then like her teeth fall, like her fake teeth fall out, and then he realizes it's not her because he actually believed it was his kid the whole time. And then she just pushes him off the roof and he dies as the house is burning. And it was just very anticlimactic. Like they just both die falling off the roof, like in the matter of a couple minutes from each other with the house burning around them. It just, I don't know. It just felt very flat to me. It didn't really do anything for me. Of course, Esther gets away. She doesn't die in this movie or anything like that because this movie, of course, is leading into the original first movie. This is a prequel. So like after she gets away, they just like, the cops just say, oh, there was a house fire. Everybody, the whole family died in the fire, but Esther was the only one that survived. Well, we're gonna put her in a very good orphanage, where a good family will find her a nice home, and that's what leads into the very first movie. And my problem with this is like, well, I feel like doing the autopsy and seeing the bodies, you can definitely tell that the mom and the dad fell off the roof to their deaths. And then if they found the other body in the house, I feel like even if it was burnt, you would still see the stab wound. So something happened. There was some foul play involved, I feel. But I'm not a forensic scientist. But so, I mean, who am I? It just felt very odd. It felt very weird to me. And then it just cuts to like what I was saying with them sending her to an orphanage to find a new home, which leads into the first one. And then it just ends. And this movie's only like just over an hour and a half. It goes by so quick. It's very well paced. I really enjoyed it though for the most part. That twist though, I feel like it's going to throw a lot of people off at first, just like it did for me. I didn't like it at all, to be honest. At first, I was like, "What? Why?" Like it just felt so out of place and weird, like that was actually gonna, but then again, you don't really see too many like 30-something-year-olds that look like children though too, so I guess you gotta open up your imagination a little bit to these kinds of things. But apparently they're already talking about like the Isabelle Fuhrman that plays Esther in this movie. She's already saying that there's in talks for like a third Orphan movie if this one does well, if people are interested in it. I'd be interested to see where it goes. I just don't want it to fall back into that same thing where, oh, she just goes to another family, slowly tears it apart, ends up killing everybody and gets away. I mean, she does die in the first one, so my guess is they're going to have to just go do like a prequel before the prequel. So a prequel to a prequel, or like where how she got to the mental institution at the beginning of this movie. So maybe it'll talk about the original first family or where she came from before that. So who knows where they're going to go with the story for the next one, if they do a next one. But it seems like it's getting decent reviews for this one. So I can definitely see them doing another one. But as for the movie itself, I would say it's a recommend. I mean, it's only streaming on Paramount Plus, but I definitely recommend go checking it out, especially if you're a fan of the original one, or just a fan of just fun horror flicks in general. With this one has a huge twist. If you didn't read anything about it, you're going to be pretty surprised about the twist in this movie. But I definitely recommend it. It was a pretty cool movie. A lot more gore than I expected. I like my gore in these kinds of movies, so it was cool seeing some of the gore stuff in this. I wish they would have been a little bit more inventive with the kills. Some of them were just a little dull. And the ending was just a little flat for me. They could have did a little bit better. It was a little rushed towards the ending. But, can't really change that at this point. So hopefully they kind of grow and learn from this in the next movie. I'm not sure if it'll be the same director doing the next one, but who knows? But yeah, that's the review here for The Orphan First Kill. wait a minute. And before that, they named this Orphan first kill, which this isn't her first kill. They talked about she was with a previous family before, and they kind of hinted and insinuated that she was the one that was the demise of them. So none of these kills in this movie were her first kill. So it was an odd title for this. They should have just went with like the Orphan 2 or the Orphan the Beginning, or I don't know, Orphan Travels to the US. I don't know. But they could have did something a little different with the title than first kill, because none of these were her first kill at all. But yeah, I definitely recommend this movie for anyone that's a fan of horror and just fun horror flicks in general, and just big twists. If you're a fan of big twists, definitely check out the movie. But yeah, that's the review for this week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe here on the Cinema Trip Reviews channel. Make sure to go follow us at Cinema Trip Views on Twitter. And I didn't mention this at the beginning of the show, but we are across all podcasting platforms now. We are, I believe, on Spotify. You can still watch the video version that you're watching now on YouTube, but across like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, across multiple other podcasting platforms. We do have audio-only versions of the reviews here. So if you don't have time to watch the video on YouTube, go check out the audio-only versions. We're going to have a lot more reviews coming in the future here. We're gearing up for our October Review Spectacular. We got a lot of stuff planned for you for that. And until next week, we'll see everybody later.